Welcome back to the channel. We continue our visit to Alsace, and after our last visit to Kaisersberg, we head north. Specifically, we will visit the Natzweiler-Struthof Concentration Camp. But as we pass into the concentration camp, we will first make a quick visit to the Mount Saint Odile shrine. Located on the top at about 763 meters high, and which is a famous place of peregrination in French lands. As for the parking, you will have no problem. It has 3 different free parking lots, all located a short distance from the entrance of the sanctuary. From the parking we access the abbey, called Hohenberg, founded in the 7th century, according to tradition by Odile of Alsace, daughter of the Dukes of Alsace-Merovingios, and venerated by the Catholic Church as Saint Odile, patron saint of the region, whose remains rest alongside those of the dukes in this place. Since the Middle Ages, it is a destination of spiritual pilgrimage, frequented in particular by people affected by eye diseases, receiving every year approximately 1 million pilgrims. The entrance to the different dependencies is free, although apart from the tomb of the Holy One, and the library that when we arrived was closed, and that was the most interesting to see as it seems. The most impressive of the visit to this place are the views that we offer above all the mountain range of the Vosges, observing if the day is clear enough, even the German Black Jungle. It is a place where you breathe a lot of peace and tranquility, and where you will enjoy walking through the outer gardens of the abbey. In these gardens, we have 2 chapels separate from the main building, the Chapel des Larmes or Chapel of Tears, and the Chapel des Anges or Chapel of the Angels. Small chapels whose inner walls are covered with mosaics in the Byzantine style. In the Chapel of Tears, it is said that Odile cried the death of his father, and cried for the salvation of his soul. Under a grid, there is a place that would have been excavated by Odile's tears. As for the other chapel, the Chapel of the Angels, overlooking a rising rock, was built in the 12th century in the place where in Roman times, it is said, there was a watchtower. As for the other chapels you can visit already in the main building, you have the Chapel of the Croix, the oldest of the sanctuary dating from the 10th or 12th century, the Chapel of Saint Odile where there is the sarcophagus from the 8th century that contains the relics of the saint, and the Capella of the Assumption of the Most Holy Virgin Mary, built in the late 17th, and that in 2016, was erected as a minor basilica by Pope Benedict XVI. After enjoying peace, tranquility, and the stunning views from the mountain of Saint Odile, we headed to the concentration camp of Natzweiler-Struthof. Separating both places a distance of less than 20 kilometers by a road with a few curves, but with little traffic in May. Reaching our destination in about 20 minutes. As for parking, you have no problem, as the place has a large and free parking at the entrance of the complex. This concentration camp has its origin after the discovery in September 1940 of a pink granite phyllon. The first 300 prisoners arrived between the 21st and the 23rd of May, and were mostly Germans from the camp of Sachsenhausen, common inmates and deserters. The main camp had a network of about 70 subfields, and was designated by the camp administration as a destination from 1942 for the deportation and murder of prisoners of the resistance from all over Europe. In the highest part of the village is the memorial of the deportation and the cemetery, but we could not visit it because it was in restoration. This camp was operational until September 1944, when prisoners were evacuated to other camps, such as Dachau, being the first death camp discovered in Europe on November 23, 1944. It is exciting to go through this place of death, where the first thing we find are two constructions, the barracks where a museum can be seen today and the bar where the kitchen was installed. Between these two buildings, in descent, are the barracks where the prisoners lived, or better said, where the inmates lived. They were applied the principle of extermination by forced labor, in application of the decree Night and Fog, in reference to their particular operational and in the application of practices of forced disappearance of persons, including the murder of prisoners of war, whose rights were then protected by the Geneva Convention. The prisoners taken in accordance with this decree were hiddenly deported, without evidence or record of the facts and their circumstances, to specific concentration camps such as this or Gross Rosen in Germany, where they were identified in their clothes with the letters NN. In the lower part of the camp, we have the crematory and the prison cells. From August 1943 the camp had this crematory and a gas chamber located below, 1.5 kilometers from the camp. In the annexed building, there are the prison cells, where you can observe in the first room to the right, the bastinade, one of the many torture methods they used. Returning to the crematory, all kinds of medical experiments were also practiced, highlighting the autopsy room where they observed the results obtained in these experiments. There is also a room, in which several urns for ashes are observed, where they sent the ashes of the deceased to the relatives of these, and that, in a cruel way, had to pay their amount if they wanted to receive these ashes. In the outskirts is the village where the camp commander lived, being ordered by one of these field commanders called Joseph Kramer, when the biggest atrocities and number of murders were committed, being later commander of the camps of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, where in December 1944, he was made prisoner, being executed by hanging in December of 1945. In total, more than 52,000 people from about 30 different nationalities were deported to this concentration camp and its annexed camps, of which more than 20,000 never returned.